Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me this week is Jonathan Swope, Chief Marketing Officer at Solus, a sun-grown cannabis brand based out of Santa Barbara, California. Thank you very much for joining me today, Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com, and make sure to subscribe to our daily newsletter. Get the podcast delivered to your inbox first. Jonathan, I always like to start with a bit of background. How did you find yourself in cannabis?
Well, it's something that we always partook in when we were younger. And when it started to become, us older, more businessmen, we were always watching the legal status changing. And when California started to change, we knew how large of a market California was. And it was something that we wanted to try our hand at. And so when it finally turned legal, we started shopping around, looking for different licenses and trying to figure out which avenue to go in. We ended up in Cathedral City with a license down there and a Type 7 volatile extraction license, and started making wholesale distillate, selling about 100 kilos a month, which we learned a lot from the quality control perspective, where people would deny an entire kilo for one single spec in there. So we started learning very quickly, what quality was. And then as VapeGate hit, things in the wholesale distillate world were not perfect. And we realized we needed to control our own destiny. So we moved to Santa Barbara, where we have 2 Type 7 licenses and a Type 11. And then we ended up pairing a farm up with that. So that way we could kind of seed to dispensary.
How did the business respond to VapeGate?
It was not a fun time for us, honestly. We were probably doing about $1 million, $1.2 million a month in sales, and we went down to 600, and then 30,000, and then zero. We learned a lot, in California cannabis, they call them extinction events. So that was one of them. Some people went back home, some people powered through it. So we learned that we needed to control our own destiny, control our own supply chain, but also be able to play both sides of the market, be able to play the flower side, but also the vape side, because you never really know what's coming down the pipeline with, new laws or new policy procedures. So we have both sides of the coin now.
What were other extinction events in California cannabis?
Some people had problems with when Cat 3 came on with heavy metals. That was one. Most recently, the taxes were almost an extinction event, or were an extinction event before Gavin Newsom changed it, but people were, paying more taxes for the price of the weed that they were selling. So they were losing money on a sale. And then I believe people claim there was 4 or 5, and I can't remember what the very first one was, but I think it was just kind of market being oversaturated with licenses, the price dropping down this past, 2020, the price got very, very low. Similar to what you saw in Oregon, where the price went down and then came back up and stabilized.
What was the transition like moving from a distillate-focused vape business or vape-focused business into something that is seed to sale or seed to dispensary?
It was interesting. It's a new set of headaches, right when we kind of had that whole thing figured out, and there's a fine oiled machine, got thrown a curveball. Moving from Cathedral City to Santa Barbara County didn't suck at all, but we also got up there right when COVID hit. So we moved up there in 2019. We got our licenses in. We were trying to get permitting. We got our farm under contract, which was a dude farm. And then we were going to permit it for cannabis. And 2020 hit, and everybody went to work from home models. We couldn't walk into the county city offices to talk to them about our projects, and everything just really slowed to a snail's pace for quite a while. So it was a lot of different changes all at once.
Did you have any experience in previous industries or in other careers that kind of helped prepare you for some of these trials and tribulations that you went through when you jumped into cannabis?
I think one of the things that we found ourselves being successful is that, we always smoked weed growing up. We ended up getting into the business world and not coming up through the cannabis world. So we could, sit at a boardroom with an Excel spreadsheet and talk about numbers. We also could go to the other side with the traditional cannabis people and talk about all the things that we did growing up. So we kind of got to play the middle there. But yeah, I think no matter how prepared you think you are for cannabis, there's never a dull day in cannabis. So it's always new. We're always learning. We never came into anything with egos, which is one of the things that we try to strive or pride ourselves on, is that we don't think we're better than the competition. We're always trying to be the best that we can be, and everyone can do well together.
In terms of being the best that you can be, what is the importance or differentiator for sun-grown cannabis? Is it something that you preferred as a connoisseur?
Yeah, I think it's actually coming around as mainstream is starting to understand it. Some Best in Show last year, Emerald Cup, was a sun-grown cannabis, which was a big moment for us. And that's where I talk about, the industry, our sun-grown friends, all boats rise in the tide sort of scenario. Their triumph is also ours as well. But yeah, it is something that we're educating people. We think it is actually something that everyone's starting to understand. With stabilized genetics, which we've been able to accomplish, we can have high THC, which was the big myth there that you couldn't. Sun-grown scientifically is able to have more cannabinoids and more terpenes. So you have a better flavor profile. You can get more cannabinoids just from nature alone. There's a couple different light spectrum scales where people are trying to mimic the sun with their indoor bulbs, but it's even with the combinations of all the bulbs they use, you still don't get what Mother Nature has provided.
Yeah, it's still fake sun.
Yeah, right. And we added kind of indoor technology to our outdoor grow, where we used our grower was Driscoll Berries forever. We had two different growers. We have a cannabis grower and we have a scalable grower because we wanted to be able to scale. And so he did Driscoll Berries, and thousands of acres. But we used that pot system that he used, which is really mimicked from, that's where indoor cannabis uses a similar thing, where each pot has a spider in it. We're able to monitor all the minerals, nutrients coming in and also going out. So we have kind of the motherboard computer that allows us to change those on a fly, and we check those every single day, and what we have called is recipes. So it allows us to get as much out of what we put into it as we can. And then also, if it's not eating certain minerals and nutrients, we would then not put as much as those in, so we can save some money there as well.
What is a spider?
It's like four legs that prongs that go into that's our kind of terminology. I'm sure that's not the textbook terminology of what they are, but it's a irrigation system that then it spits out, and each pot has four what we call spider legs that go in there. So it's a drip system rather than a spray system. So it allows us to conserve water as well there.
Okay. Are your cultivation efforts with the end goal of, maybe winning an Emerald Cup one day?
Absolutely. We clearly would love to win as many awards as possible. But yeah, the thing about it is that the science behind this outdoor cannabis sun-grown is becoming better and better, and more stabilized genetics. The more we grow each year, we're able to learn more about our microclimate and what works and what doesn't work. So we feel like we probably have flower right now that would do well there. We actually are internally talking about starting to go out and enter all of our best strains into these awards and cups and just starting to get our name out there. But we've been so busy just launching statewide in California. It's some of the things have been put to the back burner.
That's one of the things that I don't think people understand about some of those awards, is that they take kind of a bit to enter and track through the process. And, especially when you're a startup, you really don't have a lot of extra time.
No, we do not. Not enough hours in the week for sure. And it does, it does involve that. And there's, you asking earlier about our business acclimate. There's always that saying, work on your business and not in your business. And right now, we're definitely in our business, and eventually we'll be able to work on our business. But those are the things that are on your business. Being able to take off, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday to go up to a cup is great. And we always go up there because we want to see the competition and everything. But we're usually able to pop up there for a day or so, and then we're right back to what we were doing before that.
One thing that I was drawn to with Solus is your conservation efforts and your importance that you put on your company's environmental impact. Can you talk about some of the methods that you use and why you chose to use them specifically for conservation and limiting your impact on the environment?
Absolutely. And I learned a lot through this. I was the one that spearheaded the turning a dude ranch into a cannabis farm. We didn't want to pay these crazy cannabis prices. So we did all of our licensing for the 2 Type 7s and the Type 11 ourselves, but also that required us to get the farm, our LUP, and also our business license out there, which, is a major hurdle. We ran into the endangered California tiger salamander, and I've learned more about the endangered tiger salamander through baptism by fire than I ever thought I would know in this lifetime. But through that, we understood, the need for that, and we worked very closely with California Fish and Wildlife and U.S. Fish and Wildlife to make sure that the migration patterns and the areas of our farm were not disrupting different areas, that the endangered tiger salamander, but also the spade toad, which is not recognized as endangered, but it is listed as a concerned species. And so we ended up buying also credits there to offset what we were doing at our farm at a La Purisma mitigation bank credits there. They have a mitigation bank farm there, which I call it like the Club Med for tiger salamanders out there. So we kind of sponsored 8 acres out there to make sure that they're going to thrive. But yeah, so we learned a lot there. And then honestly, through a lot of the other things, some of it's cost saving measures, but it's also just wasteful from a business perspective, and then environmentally too. With the spider system, you're not spraying water everywhere, and it's kind of just running off. You drip out what you use, and we want to do that for a lot of different reasons. Conservation and business, being the top 2.
When you came upon the salamander and toad problem, did you ever envision they would take so much of your time to find a solution?
It's interesting. We're having a hard time finding somebody to write a letter for us. So we ended up talking to a gentleman that worked for the University of Santa Barbara. He actually was the gentleman that got the tiger salamander listed on the endangered species, and he actually used our farm and neighboring farms to be able to do that report. He was pretty certain that they weren't going to be on our farm, but there was a potential habitation there. He had told us then, he's like, look, if you guys withdraw your cannabis license, just tell them you're growing blueberries, come in here and do all the things you need to do, come back and then do your license. Like, I'll save you a year. And we kind of laughed. And honestly, he probably was right. And I know we all said it in jest, but we didn't think it would take as long, but I don't think we would have changed anything there, because the goal of this isn't to try to disrupt, as much earth as possible. It's kind of, we want to do it right. We want the old Boy Scout, leave it better than you found it sort of scenario.
It's encouraging that you hear that so frequently in the cannabis industry. In some companies, it's lip service, but it seems like, overall, as a whole, the cannabis industry seems very mindful when it comes to its impact on the environment. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And honestly, we've been trying to find other ways to do it. And sometimes the industry just isn't there yet. Recyclable product or recyclable glass and everything else, return policies. And it's things that people have tried in the past, and it becomes more of a headache, and they kind of just move on. So yeah, you're right. Sometimes it is just pushing towards the almighty dollar. Right now in California cannabis, the margins are really thin. The prices of weed have come down. The cost of, labor and, construction and everything else you're doing has gone up. Somebody told me it's maybe the only commodity in the world that the price is going down, and while the other costs are going up. So it's very tough to find the middle ground there. But it is something we're always searching for.
What did it take to turn a dude ranch into a cannabis farm?
How much time do we have? I mean, it was hard. I'm not gonna lie. We were able to kind of structure the purchase of the land properly, so we were technically renting it to make sure that the boat floated out there, because the LUP is not a guaranteed process. The county of Santa Barbara had put a cap on there of 1,500 acres, so we were racing up against that too. And really, honestly, I mean, we ended up doing what they called an initial study, which is I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure we're the only farm in California that at the time had gotten one. I'm not sure after. We had to do an incidental take permit with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which allowed us to accidentally kill up to 10 tiger salamanders. I'm glad to say we have killed 0. So, but it's in place because it's a federal crime to kill an endangered species. So you have to get that. And then they had a subsequent document with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, or with California Fish and Wildlife, that was a similar kind of take permit. So we were having to juggle all of those. The initial study is 31 or 35 different environmental reports put into one. I think it's about 180 pages. It probably took us 9 months to a year, and most people told us that it usually takes 2 to 3 years to get one completed. So luckily, I am pretty OCD about my emails, so I just had reminders set to email people once a week for almost a year, trying to get things pushed forward. And again, it was in the middle of COVID, so they were all working from home, and their workloads had changed, and everything had kind of become different. So it was, I'm not going to say it was a monumental task, but it wasn't a seamless process by any means. We came out clean on the other side, and we're fortunate for that.
Did you have to do any sort of remediation to the land?
When we had virgin soil, and that was one of the things that was what the gentleman from the University of Santa Barbara was saying, that we hadn't disrupted the land, and it had never been disrupted because it was a dude farm. So when we actually tilled it and ripping the soil and then tilling it up to be able to be farmed, we had some gopher holes out there. So we had to have a person on site come check every single gopher hole to make sure there wasn't a salamander at the bottom of it. So we were paying biologists there to, just watch over it and raise your hand when you found one, and he'd come over and give you a clearance. And then we checked the entire field. So we were very thorough in how we did it. And we worked hand in hand with the local, organizations, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, California Fish and Wildlife. And I make it, sound as more tedious than it was, but it was definitely something that we didn't think we were going to have to ever do. But, we're glad that we did. And it ended up, becoming easy once we understood what we had to do.
Did you find, how many of these salamanders did you find on the property?
I've never seen one.
Okay. I mean,
I've only met 2 or 3 people that have ever seen one in their life. Obviously, that's why they're endangered, but also there's a couple ponds north of us that physically have them in there, but they draw a ring around them as a radius of a potential habitation of other ponds. And unfortunately, the radius hit a couple water areas in our land and one south of our land that became a area of concern.
See, I just imagine that your land was like a hotbed of these things, and that, after they were relocated, you kept some as like, a company mascots, but 0, huh? That's frustrating.
There may be some salamander tattoos in our future if this thing, goes as we hope. But yeah, it's interesting because, there's a couple of times that we found some spade toads that we thought was, California tiger salamander larvae, and which would change exactly what we would have to do, because that whole area would have a radius around it. And so our heart kind of sunk. And then they finally, checked them, and it's a spade toad, which we then, extracted those with environmental biologists there, and we built another pond on site that is a spade toad pond. And so we've been hiring a biologist to make sure that anyone's larvae that pop up in any water areas there, that they're moved to the pond. And that's a conservation easement area of our land, which we have 600 acres. We have really about 525 conservation acres. So that's in an easement. We cannot touch it. And we made sure to actually have different mitigation bridges so if this pond, as they thrive, they can get back into the wilderness and not have to try to crawl through a cannabis farm.
Okay. It sounded like one of the things that drew you to the land was this quote, Goldilocks climate. Can you describe what a Goldilocks climate is and why it was so alluring?
Yeah, so they use a Goldilocks, like the Earth is in the Goldilocks ring around the sun, where it's not too hot, not too cold, sort of scenario. We learned a lot about, because it's kind of wine country over there. They use the term refrigerated sunshine, and the warm California sun in Santa Barbara, especially West Santa Barbara County, you get the cold ocean breezes coming in, so it cools the area and allows for a lot of different plants and growing organisms to thrive, cannabis being one of those. So it was always interesting there. With California and Santa Barbara, when people had already gotten the licenses previous to us, they were charging crazy numbers, which have now come down to maybe back down to earth a little bit, but still. So yeah, we wanted to be in that area, but we needed to kind of create the value our own.
It also stresses on your website that you're bringing automation to outdoor cultivation. What type of automation? Is that the spider that you're talking about, or are there other tools and equipment?
We brought in a mega board, which is a cultivation irrigation computer that then has a fertigation kind of plant at our southern cultivation area, which then pushes out all the water comes through there. We add minerals, nutrients to it. It all is allowed to see the flow through. What we take each plant out, usually each day, and moving around to different what we call blocks, really valves. So each block we check what's going in there, and we're able to see there. And we what we call recipes. So we can change a recipe where it's like, hey, the pH is low. We need more nutrients. It's not taking this. The calcium needs to be higher. So we can kind of click on the recipes, and it allows us to do that. We also have an off-site tea brew facility, which that allows us to increase microbials back into the bowel injections. It'll boost biological activity, beneficial fungus, bacteria, sugars, amino acids. And that's just really kind of fancy talk for more substantial root growth. And that allows us to heighten the terpenes, but also more resin production, which increases the THC level as well. So that's how we're able to try to make sure that we accomplish, the higher THCs that the market wants without just making sure that it's done properly from the very beginning to make sure that the end product is what we want it to be.
Talking about the end product, it sounds like Solus does a lot of rigorous quality control, and flower presentation is important to you guys. What do you guys do to kind of go that extra mile when it comes to quality control and maintaining that flower presentation that you're looking for?
A lot of the automation allows us to do that. As the computers and the machines are kind of doing some of the work for us, it allows them to our farm team to be able to go through and check. We make sure that that's done there. We have multiple different consultants that come in. We have a soil consultant, we have a minerals nutrient consultant, we have another cannabis consultant on top of our cannabis farmer, just because you can't put too many eyes on it, right? So we do that, and it allows our team to kind of be free from having to go through and all the waterings and stuff like that with the watering truck, which we watch other farms down the street do every single day. So that allows us there, but also as it comes off the farm, we have a drying facility that we partner with, and then we monitor how they're drying it and curing it and trimming it as well. And then ultimately we even go further when the testing comes. We don't really want to put anything in a jar that's less than 27%. We've been lucky with our stabilized genetics to be able to achieve that pretty much across the board. We had one or two that was in the 25, 26, but we had 10 or 11 on our menu right now, above 27, 28% THC. Right now, we're selling the smalls in our jars, and we kind of pass the QC on to our customers through the jar because they can see it, right?
Mm.
A lot of other people are in Mylar bags in our value range, and the customer can't see it. And oftentimes we talk to dispensary owners that they get home and they're not happy with what they see when they open it. Somebody described it as a bag of Lay's, where it looks like a big old bag of
Oh,
weed,
yeah.
and then you open it up and it's like a third full, you know. So, and then honestly, with those Mylar bags too, it can get crunched real bad. You get some fluff down there. You want your bud to have better structure than that when you smoke it. So, the glass jar is something also that we pay a little bit more on packaging. We're very aware that we do that. We still want to have you be in the same price range with the other value brands, so we kind of sacrifice that on the front end, but we think that people really enjoy it on the shelves, but also on the back end too.
Are you guys only flower, or do you have other product lines?
Right now we are smalls, flower. We do 8s, half ounces, and ounces, all in glass jars. With us cutting our teeth in distillate, we always wanted to have a vape line. I mean, we know more about quality control with the distillate for longer, just because that was what was our livelihood, So we do have a vape line right now. We do 1 gram botanical terps distillate pens. We're right now getting into the disposable. We're probably going to do add a 1 gram disposable to that. But also, because we came from extraction, we've been toying with a lot of different craft stuff. So our future R&D, or not our near future R&D, will be adding a diamond line where we're going to have infused pre-rolls with diamonds, regular, we're a flower company, so pre-rolls kind of become a byproduct of what we're doing on the small side. Not every bud can go into a jar for smalls. So we're going to grind down the rest, make some pre-rolls. We'll do a 1 gram pre-roll. We'll do a multi-pack. It's going to be 7.5s in a multi-pack, regular flower, and then back to that infused with the diamonds. And then we're also going to do a craft cart line, not only the regular carts, but also disposable with diamonds there. And we're extracting all that in house. We try to eat everything we kill. So we take every part of the plant and put it to work. It allows us to keep our costs low, allows us to R&D with the quality control again, to make sure that what we're putting in there is exactly what we want it to be.
Of the products that you have on the market thus far, what has been the response from the consumer, and what have been your most successful lines?
So clearly the half ounces and the ounces are really what moves. Our 8s move as well, but I do feel like there's a lot of competitors down there, and there's a lot of people that are just dumping weed in just cheap jars with brands that they don't really care to keep going. It's just they had some extra weed, and that's what they're doing. So at first, some people were reluctant to go with us because somebody was a quarter or 50 cents cheaper, but then afterwards, the second order, that brand doesn't exist anymore. So now they're understanding the longevity of us. And so it's been helpful there. But the half ounces and the ounces, I mean, there's great deals on them. It's a lot of weed. Our kind of slogan is expect more, smoke more. And we've kind of told you a lot of what to expect more, and what you can expect more with the sun grown, but we want people to smoke more too. So the value there and the larger quantity, those would be our 2 top sellers. The vapes are starting to move a lot too. That was a second SKU later, but now people are starting to realize, the value there, and our other competitors that are a similar product with similar hardware, similar terps, as well as similar distillate or comparable distillate, are sometimes double our price. And they've been around longer, so they have a more notoriety on name. But at the end of the day, the product is what the product is. So people are starting to become educated on that as well, that you don't just have to pay for the name because they've been around for 5 or 6 years.
In order to keep that flower presentation, what is your approach when it comes to packaging and processing? Is it all automated? Is it all by hand? Is it a mix?
So our Type 11 license in Lompoc, which is West Santa Barbara County, the kind of forgotten industrial town up there, it's our home and we love it. It has a large Planters peanut jarring machine, or the same machine that Planters Peanuts uses, which allows us to automate a good amount of it. there's still some quality control on that. You want to make sure what's going in there. So, you probably could get away with having one or, two or even one person running it. We have three. One of them's kind of a floater, and they are checking to make sure that the things are being done that need to be done there. What's going into the jar is what we want in the jar. So we are pulling things off the line and pulling out the larger buds, the better buds, and then dumping the other smaller ones in there that we'll later use for either extraction or pre-rolls and grind up for weed that way.
You also have an in-house lab. Why was it important for you guys to have an in-house lab rather than outsourcing it to a third party?
I think, again, it's just quality control. I mean, some of it comes down to cost. I'm not going to lie to you. The more you do, the better it is. But I think for us, we just wanted to be able to quality control everything. And really on the R&D side, it's really hard to, you want to make sure that when you're developing something that is exactly what you want it to be and exactly what the consumer would want it to be. When you're getting these things outside, you might get something good one time, but then you go back and you try to get it again, and either they sold it to somebody else or they haven't had the opportunity to create more. So for us, we just want to control our destiny. We learned that you can always probably find something maybe even a little bit cheaper, but is it always going to be there? Is it always going to be top quality? Can you rely on it? And for us, you can't clone yourself, so we just wanted to make sure that the only people that we had to rely on were ourselves.
Throughout your operation, what is the equipment that you just couldn't live without?
Honestly, it's the fertigation irrigation at our farm. 100%. I mean, that planter's peanut jarring machine is great. If you did it by hand, you could probably accomplish it. It wouldn't go as fast, or as if you're OCD about the sticker being perfect. They're always going to have that kind of single barrel, touch kind of thing. But for us, we couldn't do what we do without the kind of state-of-the-art fertigation, nutrients and minerals. It all starts there. If everything comes off the farm where you don't want it to be, doesn't matter what you do to it past that, it's going to just be lipstick on a pig.
Did you build the state-of-the-art fertigation system yourself, or did you partner with a manufacturer?
So we had somebody come in and help us design it. I don't think that, in the world of farming that we're doing anything that was proprietary or groundbreaking. I think we're adding, or I know that we're adding a couple of different methods, tried and true methods that allow us to kind of put things together to become what we need. But yeah, we had a irrigation design team that did that, where they also the supplier. But at that scale, you have to have it. There's a lot of different things to make sure that the water pressure is running properly, and where you put your fertigation irrigation farm as far as topography and slope to be able to properly water everything the way that it would reach all corners of our cultivation envelope.
So how you wound up on my radar was you recently signed a partnership with PedalFast. How do you plan on leveraging that partnership and when it comes to getting your name out there a little bit?
Well, so actually, Jason Wiskoski is the CEO over there. We knew him back from our distillate days, and he was at Kushco. He moved over. So it was a relationship we'd always kept. Something that we eventually knew that we were going to need. We interviewed a couple people, and PedalFast was one of the, was the best for us, and we had a great relationship with them already. It fit very seamlessly with what we were trying to do. Also, they are expanding into other states, and that's not where we're at yet. California is the fourth largest economy in the world now, or just risen up from the fifth. But so it's a monster of its own. So we're going to try to tame the monster for us. But we did appreciate the idea that they are allowing brands to go MSO with them too. So that was an allure as well. They would be the vehicle that would get Solus into other states whenever we get there. But there were so many things that they were doing at a very, very top level. They have 9 salespeople that allows us to have 9 regions of California. And California is a giant state, and every region is so different. It's insane driving around this state, going from one place to the next, how different they really are. So they had that tackled for us. So it was really a plug and play. We've been extremely happy with them. We really are just getting now going. March will be our first full month with them, and already, the 3 weeks we had in February were fantastic and already have increased our sales, and we're really excited about what's coming up next with them.
Are you doing all of your sales through Pedal Fast, or do you have some in-house? Is it the plan to keep that all outside?
So it's a combination of both. Everything's going to run through Pedal Fast, and everything will be distributed through Cannabis. And Cannabis, one of the biggest player in California cannabis distribution as well. So that's great there because they already have relationships with all the dispensaries that we want to, that we're already in and going to want to get into. Pedal Fast has 9 salespeople with a field and trade team on top of that, with a brand manager. They have their org chart is 30, 40 people that are working, for our brand. We also are going to have an internal sales team that will work hand in hand with Pedal Fast, as well as Cannabis, to kind of have just another layer there. The more people you can get out and more dispensaries you can see and more buyers you can see, the better your brand's going to do, and the more the bud tenders understand about your brand. And as we talked about here today, there's a lot to educate, So it's going to be a yin and the yang, but we're going to work together always.
You're also doing a little bit of white labeling and co-packing. How is that part of the business going to work?
So we started doing that with some brands, and now with everything that's going on with our sales, it's very hard for us to find time to do that. You have to recalibrate the machine. You have to kind of stop your workers. So we've been doing that less and less. We had one relationship left that we've been working with, and we never want to disappoint them. So they're working to find somebody new to do it. We just don't have the time. There's not enough hours in a week. We're already talking about adding another shift. So we'd run 1.5 shifts during the week just to be able to make sure that when Cannabis needs inventory and Pedal Fast is selling it for us, that we always have it. So we don't ever want to disappoint the dispensary. So that's kind of become our first priority there. And then white labeling is going to be second. But as always, is something that we can do. The flower side's tough right now with just how much product we're moving through. The extraction side is something that we've been toying with more and more.
Where did the name Solus come from?
Well, it's roaming for the sun, and it was something that we wanted to, the sun is vital in everything that we do. It all really starts there. And it's something that the growth of everything really in life comes from the sun. So it was something that we wanted to kind of use as a focal point for us as sun grown, but also just to kind of reiterate that bud tender education and patient education of sun grown cannabis.
I wanted to close it with a quote that I read of yours saying our relationship with the environment is at the core of what we do, and ask you to expound upon that. But that was kind of the common thread through this entire conversation. Was that something that you had from the jump, or was that something that you grew to appreciate through your start at Solus?
It was something that we always talked about, and if I could roll back the hands of times, I'd be lying to you if I thought that it would be at this level, because we didn't realize, the hurdles we were going to get put in front of us. But as we did get those hurdles, and as we kind of, grew into the Santa Barbara farming community and understanding that, we were really almost happy that we did, because that's what everybody out there is about. It's this farming community. And somebody on a Zoom call when, people were getting their licenses, challenge, it was a farmer there, and he was like, we were farming before wine came, now weed's coming to Santa Barbara, and he's like, in 50 years there's going to be some other cash crop. He's like, we're always going to be a farming community. It just changes what we're growing and when we're growing it. So we really appreciated learning a lot more about all that, and really being a champion for it as much as we can.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today. Before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about yourself or Solus?
No, we just love for them to, come out and try it. You always get a good deal. We're getting to more and more of your local dispensaries now. But as we expand, we just want people to, check it out. And everyone that has checked it out, we get tons of DMs on Instagram and a bunch of posts on a bunch of comments on our posts about how much they love it. So we just hope that everybody else does love it. We hope we can save you a couple bucks at the shelf as well, and still get a really quality product.
Of the products you produce, what's your favorite?
Right now, I've been smoking the Tropicana Cherry, and I got the Mac 1 here as well. I've been smoking a lot of our sativas, and then right now I'm R&Ding all of our diamond carts too, so I kind of get to pick my flavors there. But the peanut butter is probably one of my favorites so far, and the wedding cake is probably the two that I'm liking there.
Well, that all sounds excellent, and the next time I'm out in that area, I'm definitely going to check it out.
Absolutely. We'd love to give you a farm tour. It's really cool to see.
Oh, my goodness. That'd be amazing.
Absolutely. Let's make it happen.
Well, thank you again for taking the time today, and I hope we get a chance to talk again soon.
David, thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving us a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email me, you can reach me at David@Cannabis Equipment News with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. For Jonathan Swope, CMO of Solus, the sun-grown cannabis brand in California, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.